Hey, as we wrap up this Wait and See series, I'm just going to take you through again what we've been covering. It's all about the principle of sowing and reaping. And the teachers in this room will tell you that that repetition is just the best way to lock something into people's heads. And so we've been talking about this principle of sowing and reaping. And this is how Paul writes it in his book Galatians. He says, "Do not be deceived. God cannot be mocked. A man reaps what he sows." And through the series, we've been saying, hey, if you want to look at where you are in life today, a lot of that is because of the seeds that you sowed yesterday. The seeds that you sowed yesterday have resulted in where you are. And for all of us, right, some of those things in our life are really good. And we're like, yes, I sowed well. And for all of us as well, there's areas of our life that aren't going so well. And most likely because of some of the seeds that we sowed yesterday. The bad news is we can't change where we are today because those seeds have been sown and been put in the ground a long time ago. But what we all have the ability to do is determine what seed we sow today, because that will create the future that we want for tomorrow. And so that's what we've been talking about. And last week we got real practical around 3 areas, right? We got real practical about what we do with our time, about what we do with our money, and what we do with our words. And so that was real practical about things. And a lot of what we've talked about in this series has almost been done in such a way that it's about, hey, how can I apply this to my life to get what I want? Because that principle works like that. But what we're going to do today is think a little bit bigger, think a little bit broader. And what I really want to talk about today is how this principle is going to play out in terms of the legacy that your life leaves behind. And as you start to think about, hey, what do I want my life to stand for? What do I want to be known for? What do I want my legacy to represent is really what we want to talk about today. And when we're going to do this a little bit differently to give you a bit of an idea of where we're going. I'm going to share with you for a little bit. Then I've got a really, really cool story that I'm going to read to you. And then we're actually going to take just a few moments of, there's be some nice music going in the background, just real reflection time. And the reason for that is when it comes to your life, my life, the culture in which we live, we're often very busy people. That we often don't take the time to reflect the way in which we should. And so because we're sort of wrapping up the series about sowing and reaping, we just thought it'd be a really special opportunity for us today to build some time in at the end to actually create a reflective moment that might feel awkward. And the only reason it will feel awkward is because we don't reflect enough as people. And so it will last a few minutes, and I'm just warning you now, I think it's going to be a really, really special time because what we've really been praying and hoping is, like, I don't know what's going on in everyone's world. I don't know, what seeds you have sown, you are sowing. I don't know, what you love to do in particular, but God does. He knows all of that. And I think if we can create that reflective space, that we're really believing that the Holy Spirit will be able to speak to you in a way in which you need to be spoken to, whether it's an encouragement to keep going, whether it's something you need to stop, all of that sort of stuff. So that's kind of where we're going. And what I'm really hoping today is going to do is just inspire you a little bit. And because right after Paul gives us this principle, right, do not be deceived, God cannot be mocked, a man reaps what he sows, he goes on and he says this, he says, do not become weary in doing good. Do not become weary in doing good. Because what Paul knows is because this is a human thing, right? When we're doing good, we become just a little bit weary. It gets a little bit tiresome sometimes to keep doing good, right? When you try and do something for someone else, like maybe you're a really nice person, you mow some of your neighbour's lawns, and you do it once, you think, I'll be a good neighbour, I'll mow this part of their lawn, and then they don't acknowledge it, and you're like, that's all right, and then you do it again, and they don't acknowledge it, and then you do it again, and they don't acknowledge it, you're like, stuff it, I'm going to give up, right? Because that's what happens. Sometimes I like to go home and I like to tidy up the kitchen a little bit and just try and get that part of the house looking nice. And sometimes it's like, I'll get up, I'll go and do this. But after like 2 or 3 nights, it's like, do I really have to do this? Because, man, I just get tired of doing good. Maybe you've worked with a group of people and you show up and you meet with that group of people and you meet with that group of people and you meet with that group of people. And then you've met with this group for a number of times and you see no change, you see nothing happen. You're like, is it really worth my time? Or maybe you're going above and beyond in the workplace and you're turning up early, you're doing beyond what's in your job description, you're looking for opportunities to really impress, and you do that really well in your first week and your second week and your third week. And then no one else seems to notice, and all of a sudden it's like, I'll stop. And so what Paul says to us, he says, do not become weary in doing good. And then here's just the way I heard this, and I thought this was really cool. If doing good was easy, we'd never grow weary. If doing good was easy, we'd never grow weary. He wouldn't have to warn us about this. But doing good is generally hard. It takes effort. It takes intentionality. It's John Maxwell who says that everything in life worthwhile is uphill. Anything worth going after is an uphill battle, and it's just going to be difficult. And so when we talk about legacy, what I really want to just challenge us on is, hey, about these ideas of doing good. But you can apply this. You're smart people. You can apply this too to planting those right seeds when it comes to how you use your time, how you use your money, how you use your words, what you're doing in terms of your finances, in terms of your health, all of that stuff. It all fits things relationally. But if we just really focus in on the idea of the good works that we can do today. So really broad around legacy. Let us not become weary in doing good. And I love what Paul says next. He says, for. He doesn't finish this with just a full stop. He doesn't say, hey, let's not become weary in doing good. So, okay, that's really helpful. But he actually says for. He says, hey, look, that's the what. Don't become weary in doing good, that's the what. But let me tell you why, right? Just don't become weary in doing good. That's just like telling someone not to become tired, like just keep running, don't get tired. It's not going to help me. I'm going to get tired. But he says, for. He says, let me tell you why. And then he says this, he says that just the right time. Or at the proper time, actually, is how he says it. He says, at the proper time. And remember this principle of sowing and reaping? What happens? We sow, there's a period of time, and we reap, right? We always reap later, we always reap greater. And he says, at the proper time. When's the proper time for most of us? Now, yesterday, right? But Paul's saying, no. Keep doing good. Don't grow weary in doing good, for at the proper time. And he continues and he says, we will. We will. Not we could, not you might, not on the balance of probabilities, not potentially. He says, no, keep doing good, because at the proper time, you will. This is the confidence that Paul has got in his Heavenly Father. This is the confidence Paul has got in that what's going to happen, and in terms of how powerful this principle is, that at the proper time we will reap a harvest. At the proper time. We're sowing. Waiting. Proper time. We will reap a harvest. But we'll only reap the harvest if we what? Do not give up. If we don't give up. It's scary to think sometimes, right? When I reflect on my own life, maybe you can reflect on your life, and maybe other people around you. How many of us have maybe planted seeds and we got to a point and we gave up just before the proper time came? It'd be like Joshua, and he's leading the people around Jericho, right? And he's leading all the Israelites around Jericho, and they get told they've got to go around one time a day for 6 days, and on the seventh day, go around 7 times. Imagine if they gave up after 6 days. It would be nothing more than like a walk around the city. But because they didn't give up, because they didn't stop, man, the incredible thing happened, and the walls came down. How many of us might be stopping at lap number 6 when it comes to the good works that we're doing? And Paul says, hey, you will reap a harvest. It's going to happen if you do not give up. An example of this is an artist, Van Gogh. And again, I don't know anything about art. I don't know anything about art history. I haven't even done a good Google search, so I can't even pretend to try and say something, because if I did that, someone else would be like, you're so far wrong, there's no point. But I do know a little bit about Van Gogh. And the reason I know a little bit about this was because about 2 years ago, there was a big exhibition that was put on in Wellington. And a lot of his paintings got projected up onto the sides of projectors. And there were these images, and they'd change, and quotes would come up, and it was this pretty big area that was all done with this amazing stuff at night time. This time of the year, so it was dark earlier in the evening, and you'd walk around and you'd see this, and the place was packed. Like the tickets actually sold out for this exhibition when it was in Wellington. And this exhibition wasn't only in Wellington, but it was like moving all around the world. That tens of thousands, I think they were expecting hundreds of thousands of people across the world to go through this exhibition. And so you get a bit of an idea of it here. I took, the photos are bad because I took them. But like, some of the quotes were really, really, really cool. And like one talks about there's nothing more deeply artistic than to love people. I'm like, how cool's that? Like, that's like biblical, man. And the interesting thing is, his dad was actually a Protestant preacher. Another thing that Van Gogh said when he was alive was he said this: I can't change the fact that my paintings don't sell. He only ever sold one painting when he was alive, and it sold for 400 francs, which is the equivalent of about $1,900 today. I can't change the fact that my paintings don't sell, but the time will come when people will recognize that they are worth more than the value of the paints used in the picture. He was like incredible, the amount of paintings that he drew. Apparently, according to the exhibition that I went to, there was over, I think, 2,200, over 2,000 works of art, 930 paintings, 1,100 drawings and sketches. But in his lifetime, only one ever got sold. If we were to look at Van Gogh's life and say, hey, would he be considered a success? You'd be, well, would he? No, probably not, because he spent all this time doing all this art, all these sketches, all this work, and he was able to sell one copy. Would he really leave a legacy? Has he wasted his life doing all of these sketches, all of these drawings? Yet here we are now, over a century later, hundreds of thousands of people are looking at his artwork every single year. One of the pieces of his art that was written about at this exhibition, they talk about how it got sold in 1990 for $82.5 million US. He has left a bigger imprint on this world than almost any other artist that's ever lived. His legacy is incredible. Did he keep going? He surely kept going. Look at how much he painted. Look at how many sketches he did. Did it happen in his lifetime? No. Did it happen? Yes. You see, you and I, we can, when we think about this idea of the harvest, maybe we're going to see it, maybe we won't. Paul says to you, hey, my encouragement to you is to don't grow weary in doing good. But at the right time, you will reap a harvest if you keep doing good. This might have, for some of us in the room, they're a little bit older. And we've seen this happen, right? Especially in faith circles where you've seen men and women of faith who have lived an incredible life of faith up to a certain point, and then they just pivoted. And then they turned away from it. And you see what happens at the end of their life, and you sit back and thinking like, what's going on? You did all of this incredible stuff. And something happened, and it's just heartbreaking to see. But you see it happen over and over. And yet we know other people, right, that ran that race right till the very end. And it's inspiring and it's special. And then the promise we've got is that there will be a harvest if we don't give up. If we don't give up. If we break it right down again to that practical side that we've been looking at, that breakthrough will come in terms of the relationship, in terms of your finances, in terms of your health, in terms of your studies, if you keep doing the right thing and don't give up. But even more so, I think, when it comes to that legacy we want to leave with our life. Let me give you just 3 quick thoughts on doing good, and I'll just preface these. These are my thoughts, okay? These aren't Paul's thoughts. His thoughts are really, really good. My thoughts are okay. You can take them or leave them if you want. Take hold of Paul's thoughts. But just 3 thoughts I've got on doing good if you really want to see that harvest. Three practical thoughts on this. Is one, narrow your focus. Narrow your focus. That there's so much that needs to be done in our world. Like, how many million people are going hungry every day? How many million people are illiterate that haven't got the ability to read, to write, to get educated and open up all the opportunities that come through education? How many struggling relationships are there that need people to come alongside them and help them and support them? The needs just go on and on and on and on and on. There's so much need out there. The reality is you can't meet every need. You probably are not going to feed every hungry person in the world, but you can feed a hungry person. If I narrow my focus and say, look, I can't do everything, but I can do something. I can't help everyone, but I can help someone. I can't get alongside all of those people that are going through a really hard time relationally, but man, I can really lean into those two because they live next door to me. I can't feed all the kids that are hungry, but I've got these ones on my street, man, I can do something about that. That if we actually narrow the focus, I think we'll actually see a much better harvest when we can all just say, hey, I'm going to narrow the focus. The second thought when it comes to doing good is we've got to embrace the long term, not the short term. Do you know what a lot of us, we do? We go, hey, I'm going to go and do some good. And we get all motivated and excited. And we go and help here, and then we walk away. And then we help here, and we walk away. And we help here, and we walk away. Spray and walk away type people, right? But the biggest difference made is when we can stick with it for the long term. I don't need to come along and give you some advice for a week and then move on. No, I'm going to get alongside you. I'm going to support you. I'm going to help you. And I'm going to champion you. And I'm going to encourage you. I'm going to give you a hand up when you're down. And I'm going to sit there and laugh with you and smile with you when you tell me about your victories. But I'm in this for the long run. When it comes to doing good, we've got to think long term, not just short term. And then, again, these are my thoughts, so feel free to disagree. That's cool. But I think if we're going to really see a good harvest, it's going to take time and it's going to take money. And depending on where you are in life, right, normally one of these is easier to give than the other. When you're younger, you tend to have more time and not a lot of money. So it's like, I can give all my time to this and then to help out and do something to make a difference here. But as we spoke about last week, where your money is, where your treasure is, there your heart is also. So yeah, bring your time, but I encourage you just to give a little bit of money too. Others of us that are further on in life, our time's a lot more scarce than our money. And for some of us, it's like, oh, there's another problem. I'll write out another check. I can give to that. Yep, here's your money. See you later. I don't need to come. Just take my money, use it for good, do something with it. And I think if we're really going to see a special harvest, what we've got to do is, and we're going to narrow that focus. We're not going to try and do everything, but we're going to identify what our focus can be. We're going to think long term, and we're going to get involved. We're going to get involved with our time, and we're going to get involved with our finances. And I think if we do that, man, we could do so much good, so much good. So just think about the difference we could make. So imagine with me for a moment if all of us, right? If all of us said, okay, how can I make a difference? What can I focus in on? And someone might say, man, I want to really work with some young kids. Someone might say, I really want to work with people that have got some mental health challenges. Someone else might go, man, I want to work in the addiction space. Someone else might say, man, I really want to get alongside elderly people. Someone might say, man, I really want to get alongside whatever community it might be. And then we said, hey, no, I'm not just here for the short term. I'm going to be here for the long term. And I'm going to get alongside this, and I'm going to support it financially, and I'm going to support it with my time. Come on, if we all did that, imagine the difference we'd make. Imagine the difference we'd see in our households, the difference we'd see in our little communities, the difference we'd see in our suburbs, the difference we'd see across the Hutt Valley if all of us said, hey, no, I'm going to do this. Can I just be, I honestly, when it comes to church life, I don't understand why anyone wouldn't want to be involved in next year ministry. I honestly cannot understand why people wouldn't want to be involved with Little Switches or Switch Kids or Iggy or youth, because that gives you the perfect opportunity to get in there and say, man, I'm going to narrow my focus. I'm going to work with this group of young people. Oh, I'm not just going to be there for a term or for a few weeks. No, I'm going to invest in them for long term. And I'm going to give them my time and I'm going to support them, because I'll tell you, I can't understand why people wouldn't do that, because, man, the difference you can make by just showing up like that consistently in a young person's life is absolutely phenomenal. So that's me. Ignore me. But what would it look like, team, for us to keep doing good? Let us not become weary in doing good. And when you're doing good, you're going to get some hits. When you're doing good, people are going to question your motives. When you're doing good, sometimes it's going to be like, oh, is it worth it? When you're doing good, you're going to get taken advantage of. When you're doing good, sometimes you're going to feel used by those that you're doing good for. And it's going to make you feel weary. It's going to make you feel tired. It's going to make you question your motives. It's going to make you say, is this worthwhile? And Paul would say it is. He'd say, don't grow weary. So to some of you, he's saying, you've been doing good for so long. Please don't grow weary. Please don't grow weary because at the proper time, he's like, you can't see it yet, but trust me. You don't know what's around the corner. You're on lap number 6. You're almost there. At the proper time. It might not even be in your lifetime. But at the proper time, you will reap a harvest if you do not give up. And another thing that Paul said, he says this the same way, and in a letter he wrote to, and in 1 Corinthians. He says it this way. I really love the way that he says it in 1 Corinthians. He says, be steadfast, immovable, always abounding in the work of the Lord. Oh, I love that, right? Be steadfast, be strong. He says, be immovable, have a wide stance. Don't let someone push you left or right. Be steadfast, immovable, always abounding in the work of the Lord. Say doing good, that's the work of the Lord, I'd say, right? And then he says, again, he adds a promise here, knowing nothing that you do is done in vain. A lot of what we do in life can be done in vain, but he says, hey, if you're steadfast, immovable, always abounding in the work of the Lord, that work is not in vain. See, as we sort of wrap this series up, one final thought I wanted to leave you with is this, is wouldn't it be better if you and I, if we measured our success by the seeds we sow rather than the harvest that we reap? See, oftentimes as we go through life, a lot of the indicators of success is all about the harvest that gets reaped. But what if we could go through our life and at the end of every day we could assess, hey, was today a successful day? Was today a good day? Not based on the harvest that came in, but by the seeds that I sowed. Because I can get to the end of the day and say, hey, did I do something good for my kids today? Did I do something good for my spouse today? Did I do something good in my workplace today? Did I do something good for my friends today? I can say, man, I sowed well today. I might not be reaping anything right now, but I sowed well today. And the good thing about that is it means everything is in our control. And in one of a really good book called The 4 Disciplines of Execution, it makes it distinguish between lag measures and lead measures. It says people, if you track lead measures, that's what you want to track because that shows you everything else you measure is lag. That's the reaping. But you're better to track your lead measures, what you're sowing. When it comes to our life, we better to measure our success by the seeds we sow than by the harvest we reap. Because, hey, let's be people who don't grow weary in doing good. For at the proper time, we will, it's a promise, reap a harvest if we do not give up. Let me read to you a story. The apple tree. You like this. Part 1, spring. I remember the small boy who used to visit me in the summer. He planted me here one day with his grandmother. They were exploring and ended up in this small valley, so far out of the way. I overheard the grandmother say she had come to the same spot with her grandparents many years before. They planted me beside this slow-moving stream that drifts lazily by, tossing light back up into my branches like confetti. I've long ago given up trying to work out what there might be to celebrate here. The stream itself, it babbles constantly, but cannot hold much of a conversation. It speaks over and over of rocks and sand, fish and frogs. But I'm grateful for the stream, for my roots found in it long ago, and much of the surrounding land is parched in summer. If I had not been laid down so carefully to grow on its banks, I might have withered long ago. Let's see what happens, the grandmother said slowly. Though the soil they had placed on me, or through the soil they had placed on me, I heard their footsteps retreating. Part 2, summer. I cannot tell you much about the next few years as I emerge from seed to leaf to small tree. The boy returned during the summer and pruned me as I grew larger. He would often just sit there beside me or lean against me as I grew. Only a few times did his grandmother join him, and I watched as she grew older more quickly than the boy and I grew up. They had long talks there sitting beneath me, and I listened to each one. They talked of the past, the present, and the future. I recall the final time I saw the grandmother as she struggled to her feet, leaning on a walking stick after sitting down under my shade. When the boy came the next summer, he was even more reflective than he had been on earlier visits, and sat there, just watching the water flow by. He was thinking, throwing small stones, listening to their sound, being still, silent. The last time I saw the boy, he had grown into a man. I was proud because I had started to produce some apples, and I saw him grab one and eat it. Then I noticed that he had in his hands an axe, and I shivered as he drew near even closer and raised it. He used it to hack at me, and after several deep cuts, he took off the branch that was growing out and away from the stream. He had shifted my angles, and this left me to only drop out over the water, or to droop out over the water. I felt like he had cut off an arm, and I resented it. The apples that had been on the branch lay scattered on the ground. Even then, I knew that this was going to determine my destiny in some way. The man cut away at the branch, laying there, unattached, and yet so intimately connected to me, until he had fashioned the straightest part into a walking stick. Was that all I was useful for? I felt a great betrayal. Yet before he left, he stood up before me, and the wind went quiet, and the birds in my branches stopped singing, and the sun shone brighter. I take a piece of you to guide me, the man said. He addressed me so formally that despite my indignity, I bowed to him as best I could. Then he was gone to live his life, leaving me alone. Part 3, Autumn. As time went by, the seasons were my only companions. They stayed long enough to feel comfortable with each other, not like the small birds who flew in and out so quickly that I couldn't even focus on them. In the winters, the snow that fell chilled me deeply, but the serene silence that resulted was worth it. Springs saw me grow again and push out new blossoms, each one representing a possible future. In the summers, my apples grew larger and larger in the sun. I was proud of them, and as the days shortened, they fell from me. I was most upset in the autumns, for by taking part of me away, the man had left only one place for the apples I produced to fall. The stream gratefully received each of them, making a sound as they slipped into the water like divers. All I could do was watch them drift away downstream and around the bend. It made me sad to see them leave. At the end of the year, or at that time of the year, I resented the man greatly. Although as a boy he had given me life and looked after me, he had also destroyed my chances for a friend, since no tree could grow there with me. All those possible companions were swept downstream to nothingness, and I kept asking myself, why had this happened to me? Part 4, Winter. The years rolled by, and each year my resentment grew with my height. My bark had become knobbled and rough. I was old now, yet I still produced fruit each season, hoping that one day they might land beside me and grow there. I towered high above the stream, but my wish was not granted. The apples dropped each time into the water to float away. I could feel a coldness within myself. The dark began to take over as I questioned all I stood for and reflected on how I had achieved nothing. Then one day an old man came walking into the valley with a small girl. Something stirred in me as they drew near, a memory of long ago. It had been several decades since I had last seen a person in these parts. The man reminded me of the grandmother who had helped plant me, for he walked slowly yet purposefully. They sat under my branches with their backs against my trunk and watched the water. I listened to them talk of the past, the present, the future. Then the little girl asked, "Is this really the source of them all, grandfather?" The old man nodded. "Yes," he replied. "And the thing is, this old tree probably doesn't even know," he smiled wistfully. "What do you mean?" asked the little girl. I too leaned in closer, listening hard. "Well, look at the bend over there," he said. You see, this tree has no way of looking beyond this valley, seeing past its own limited view. It has no way of knowing that for miles and miles down here, the stream is lined with apple trees, that they have all come from this one source. For years, this tree has been faithfully dropping its apples into the stream, and the water has washed them up to places far beyond the realm of what this tree thought could have been possible. They were quiet then. I was too, as I reflected on what was said. This brief conversation had opened a new perspective and healed something within. They had brought lunch with them. When they were done, the small girl dug 2 holes along the bank, one upstream from me, one a little way down. I saw her place something in them and cover them up. When she came back to sit beside her grandfather, who said slowly, "Let's see what happens." As they got up to leave, I saw the old man struggle to stand. The girl reached out to help. She handed him something, and I recognized the walking stick. I made my leaves move in the wind and bent closer as the years of resentment fell away. I smiled down at the boy who had planted me so many years before. He also looked up at me, tipped his hat, and took his granddaughter's hand in his, and I watched them walk away. Let me pray. Your Heavenly Father, all of us are sowing seeds. Sometimes we see what happens, sometimes we don't. And so, Father, I just ask that over these next few minutes, that you give us the courage to reflect truthfully about the seeds that we're sowing. I pray you'll open our ears to hear what it is you're saying. I pray you'll soften our hearts to what it is you want to do. And Father, I pray you'll help us to not become weary in doing good. You'll help us to not give up. Because if we do so, at the proper time, we will in fact reap a harvest. Amen.